This is an invitation to discover. Welcome to Search. To live is to be faced with the questions that life raises, no matter how hard we may try to avoid them. In this age of shallow and often meaningless words, uncritical answers are offered. But the hard and important questions deserve serious thought. Like gold, they are to be searched out. Even the wisdom that comes from the Bible does not lie on its surface, or easily understood at first glance. In this age of instant results, easy answers are what we want, but easy answers can be the most dangerous. If we are to find the real and lasting meaning to the Christian life, we must commit ourselves to the quest. We must be willing to ask, honestly, willing and unafraid, armed with the confidence of our faith. So we invite you to join us in the quest. Welcome to Search.
Fanaticism has always been a source of problems for the Christian church. Throughout the church's history, extremists have arisen to create dissension, division, and chaos in the church. We read of individuals that took up a cause which they attempted to drive into the heart of the Christian community. They proposed ideas that were irrational and contrary to the spirit and teachings of Jesus. Some of these individuals have left their imprint in some of the thinking in the church today, ideas that have not been helpful to the believer. Fanaticism has made the church and Christianity look like a strange and irrational institution. Where does this fanaticism come from? Does the Christian church and its teachings produce such fanatics? Is fanaticism the result of religion, or is it the result of being human? What is it, and how can one find healing for it? In his message for today, The Anatomy of Fanaticism, Dr. Zamora defines fanaticism and how one can find a solution to such a personal problem. Welcome to Search.
Romans chapter 10, verses 1 and 2. Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to God for them is that they may be saved. I bear them witness that they have a zeal for God, but it is not enlightened. In this passage you have one of the best definitions for fanaticism. Paul says, zeal without enlightenment. Notice he does not say without knowledge. A fanatic can have knowledge, but in many cases does not know what that means. The ability to process knowledge constructively, judiciously, well, that's what the fanatic does not possess. Now, no one likes a fanatic. Even a fanatic doesn't like a fanatic. And by this I mean that a fanatic is not one whom people like to be around. And when I talk about fanatics, at this point, I'm talking about all kinds of fanatics. Because there are fanatics in all walks of life. We think that fanatics are only found in religion. But the word fan that we use is associated with the word fanatic. A fan is one who is a fervent devotee to a team or a celebrity, a film personality. A fanatic has the same extreme devotion to an opinion or point of view. Fanaticism tends to be excessive, extremist, and unreasonable when it comes to the cherished point of view or choice. A fanatic considers himself or herself principled, standing for the right no matter what. But in most cases, it is a mindset that will not reason or be open to any other idea but his or her own. The fanatic is a potential persecutor because he or she tends towards bigotry. He or she tends to be judgmental and unbending. They see their cause as the righteous cause, and thus they can become pretty destructive. And although fanaticism can be directed onward or toward an athlete or other type of celebrity, you can see them. It's usually much more noticeable in religion because the others are acceptable. Fanatics are identified with diets and political causes and a multitude of other things. No one seems to mind this, but when religion is involved, then there is a reaction and, of course, blaming religion. Why can one be a fanatic about other things and be acceptable, but if a person shows fanatical symptoms about religion, well, this is not acceptable. However, fanaticism is a symptom of an emotional imbalance. When a person is so obsessed with something or someone so that his judgment is impaired and reason no longer controls, that's an imbalance. There are religious and political fanatics who've lost the capacity to understand right from wrong and will take human life for the sake of their cause, political as well as religious, like we saw in the Netherlands a couple of years ago. English youth beating and killing youth who supported the other team, the other soccer team. Their fanatical loyalty to their team made them lose their reason and turn to violence. Last year we saw an anti-abortionist kill a doctor who performed abortions at an abortion clinic. These are the actions of a fanatic who has lost his rational perspective. His moral value system is cast to the wind in order to murder a man who was violating what he considered to be his set of values. We see Muslims, fundamentalist groups, bombing buildings, killing innocent people because of their cause of justice, as they call it. They systematically kidnap and kill to advance their cause of justice. They become unjust to get justice. This is a convoluted way of thinking. They've lost their moral perspective. They have gone against the teachings of the founder of their own religion. Then there were the Nazis, fanatical followers of a madman. They massacred millions of Jews. This is fanaticism at its height. Couldn't think, couldn't reason, just followed the leader. It was like the systematic and institutionalized activities of the Spanish Inquisition that spread throughout the world. Millions of people were killed and tortured by the fanaticism that had twisted the values of the religion. And this is how ugly the face of fanaticism can become. And of course, religion is blamed for all of it. Religion can be at fault if the religion teaches this kind of violence, but it shouldn't be blamed if the effort of the religion is to teach love and brotherhood. It's not the religion, it's the people. How then does religion play a part in this then? Does religion make individuals fanatics? Or is fanaticism a disposition which religion, politics, or whatever else brings out of a person? We should probably ask, what is religion? Maybe when we start with that, we might get to the other. So how do we define it? Popularly, religion has to do with the belief in God. It carries with a belief in the supernatural and all that this entails. Does it mean then that an atheist cannot be religious? I suppose that an atheist couldn't if you define religion purely this way. But does this definition of religion really define religion correctly? Is religion only to be understood in terms of the supernatural, of a belief in a higher being, transcendent and mysterious? In philosophy, religion is not understood in such a narrow and limiting way. When understood more existentially, profoundly, and comprehensively, it does not exclude an atheist from being religious. Philosophically, religion is that which claims a person's ultimate concern, that which determines and gives value to the life, that which defines life as it ought to be, or defines life for the person. Now, your ultimate concern need not be God. What determines your values or your life may not be a belief in God. However, something else may claim your devotion and your commitment. There are those who have the same commitment and devotion to a secular cause as other people have to a belief in God. An immediate example of this is communism. It was not counted as a religion. It was considered a political, social philosophy. And it was militantly opposed to organized religion, but it had all the marks of a religion. We have lived to see atheistic communists shame Christians with their devotion, sacrifice, and commitment to communism. Many of them gave their lives gladly to accomplish the goals and aims of the communist cause. It had its missionaries who went to foreign fields to disseminate the communist doctrine and make disciples. It preached an earthly heaven with equality and justice. It had martyrs who died for the cause and have been celebrated as examples of the perfect proletariat to be emulated. You see, man has an intrinsic religious need. He needs something that he can believe in and commit to, something that will give him coherence, bring his life together, integrate it. Man seeks for the ideal life. These are the aspirations of religion. To paraphrase Isaiah 57:20, man is like the tossing sea, for he cannot rest. So this disharmony in human existence creates a need which results in an imperative drive to restore a unity between a person and the rest of nature and the universe. A person has to be committed to something that is fundamental to one's life, which can give a person a unity of life, that which will bring that life to a focus and thus to a purpose. And often we cannot get that by being self-centered, being introverted. Many have found out that you don't find within yourself that purpose, that integration, unless you go outside of oneself. Some look beyond themselves to find that unity of life. Others are content to search for it in the things that surround them. When a person finds the thing that integrates his life, or thinks that it integrates his life, he commits to it. He makes it a center of meaning, or what he may believe is meaning. Now that's a religious act. That becomes the ultimate concern. There is a devotion to it in that attention is given to it, and a commitment to it is also part of that attention, you see. Devotion to an aim, or an idea, or a power like God expresses this need for completeness. A person feels that he has something in life that means something. And so the intensity of devotion and loyalty to such a secular, non-religious cause can also create fanaticism. A humanist can be a fanatic just as well as a Christian. An atheist can be a fanatic as well as one who believes in God. The irrational passion with which these non-religious systems are pursued is the same kind of fanaticism we find in religion. The object which is pursued may differ, but not the basic need to which one believes they offer an answer. Believing that you have found an answer is something other than God will lead you to a devotion and commitment to it. That is what religion is. You may come to believe that there is nothing else. There is no other truth but what you have found. You close your mind to any other possibility or information, and you see others who believe differently as deceived and ignorant. You turn antagonistic and reactionary. These are the symptoms of fanaticism. So you see, fanaticism need not be religious. The fact of the matter is that human beings are incurably given to extremes and are thus, in a sense, prone to fanaticism in one form or another. Now let's go back to the text we began with, Romans 10:1-2. Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to God for them is that they may be saved. I bear them witness that they have a zeal for God, but it is not enlightened. Notice what Paul is saying. He is referring to the Jews who were not open to the possibility of Jesus being the Messiah. They have a zeal for God, but it's not enlightened. And so the Greek word here is zelon, zeal, from zeph, meaning ardor in behalf of or ardent affection. Now there's no problem with ardor or ardent affection, but even that can get out of control and become irrational. So here in this text, it is used in its bad sense. It is zeal gone wrong. It carries the idea of jealousy and envy and malice. And it has become so because it is not undergirded, not founded on reason. It comes without learning. Fanaticism is a zeal that has no learning to it. It has a complacent attitude that there is nothing more to learn. And Paul uses the word learning to mean learning about someone, and of course, that someone is God. Irrationally, they are ardent about God, zealous about Him, but they don't know Him, and they won't learn to know Him. They believe they have all the answers. The world and the universe is so immense and complex, my dear friends, no one can have all the answers. But that will not stop some people. They will take causes without rationality, without thinking. And they do this with an intensity and zeal that will breed fanaticism. Zeal without knowledge will lead to fanaticism. That's what makes a fanatic. He becomes myopic, singly focused on the one thing, and that without knowledge, without reason. It will refuse to listen to people who have thought and studied and are wise. And the result is that it makes a person incapable of learning. He has become irrational and unable to reason clearly. You see, a mature, rational, and balanced person will choose a system of belief that permits him and her to be mature, productive, and rational. A person who is blocked in his or her development generally reverts to primitive, irrational beliefs, which increase dependency and irrationality. A fanatic cannot see the inconsistency in a course that is zealous for God, while at the same express an antagonism toward a fellow Christian who may not agree with him. If he knew God, he would immediately realize that God is love, that his approach even to those who disagree with him is that of love and openness. If he knew God, he would see that God is tolerant even with sinners. He allows our stupid ideas about him in truth and reality. He really allows them. A religious zealot spends all his time trying to make people conform to his ideas. A fanatic never dialogues with a person. It's only a monologue that never listens to the one he is speaking to. He's just waiting for a break in the conversation in order to start talking again, pushing his point of view. He never converses to learn, only to convince and to convert. And his conversation generally is about the same theme. One of the greatest disasters in human history was the Inquisition. It was an atrocious effort to force people to become what they were not. No one would believe believe anything other than what was authoritatively taught. No one could worship or live other than that what the church demanded. So what it did, it stifled learning. It imprisoned great minds. It tortured innocents and godly people. And it was all done on the pretext that it was trying to save the souls of those it treated with such indignity. See, that's the way fanaticism works. Now, we don't have guillotines and we don't have torture racks, but fanaticism has its way of torturing people. The fact of the matter is that God holds the freedom of man to choose as sacred. And He gave His Son rather than to violate that gift, the gift of decision-making. If they had really known God, there would have been no Inquisition. They would have used mercy, love, and compassion to win souls to God and not to their way of thinking about God. Ardent for God. But they had not learned the important thing about God. His love, His compassion, His unlimited forgiveness, and His tolerance. The fanatic thinks that his ideas, his thinking is more important than these things. He holds these virtues in abeyance for the sake of his own misguided beliefs, which he considers eternal truth. But what is fanaticism? We've spoken of the symptoms of fanaticism, but not what it is. I said I believe it to be an imbalance in the way a person thinks. Let me go one step further. I believe that fanaticism is also an emotional oddity which can be stirred up in all of us. We have the potential to be fanatical about something or the other. We just are given to extremes. It imbalances one and leads one to extremes. Fanaticism can also be non-religious, which can become detrimental to relationships and to a productive life. It is an obsession that seeks its security and identity in something that it believes to be the answer to all his questions about life. I remember a man who had a fixation to his family, his mother and father. Every week after church, he had to go see his mother. In and itself, there was nothing wrong with it. But for him, nothing else took precedence over this, not even his wife or children. And so he neglected them in order to go see his mother. He excused his behavior with, "The family is important." However, he forgot he had left that family and now had a new one to which he owed first allegiance. He was fanatical about it. Nothing could make him do anything different. Fanaticism always carries an emotional agenda. It is reactionary because it is reacting to something in the past. It carries emotional baggage and gives it a pious character so that he can do what the emotional calls for in the name of God. It's characterized by anger. If he carries a sense of failure in his life, he is disappointed with his life, and his fanaticism can be created by his envy of those who are successful. And so he takes on a mantle of rightness and righteousness and becomes the judge and the executioner, The answer to this failure is a cause he can take up and wave before others. So fanaticism is one way by which individuals try to prove to themselves that they are all right. Sooner or later, they can become disenchanted because they haven't solved their emotional agenda. And so they carry the burden, others carry the burden all their lives. To them Jesus says, "Come unto me and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly, and you shall find rest unto your soul." He says, learn of me. Fanatic has a closed mind. That is why he never finds the answer to his anger, hatred, jealousy, envy, and malice. So Jesus says, learn of me to be restful, to be open to my peace. Learn to realize that love is the most important element in life, because it is not by proving you're right, but by how much you have learned to love and relate in love to others. Jesus said, by this they shall know you are my disciples, by loving one another, not by your theology, not by a rigid code which is imposed on people. No, that's not it, not at all. Dostoevsky tells us about fanaticism in his story, The Grand Inquisitor. Very interesting story. It is a story set in medieval Spain. Jesus comes back to Spain during the middle of the Inquisition. The cardinal, the Grand Inquisitor, spots Jesus in a crowd that has come to see the punishment of a heretic in the city square. He immediately calls his guards and has Jesus arrested quietly and taken to the dungeon. In the middle of the night, not to be seen by anyone, the Grand Inquisitor comes to Jesus' cell to interrogate him. Why had he come back? Didn't he realize there was no longer any need for him? They were handling things quite well. The people all had all that they needed, bread and drink and shelter. Why bother them with all that talk of love and brotherly kindness? They were keeping things in order. Everything was going well. And anyway, they wouldn't listen. Now they needed discipline. They needed to know that the church was right and that they must obey it. Jesus stood there in silence in the middle of that dungeon. Well, very much the same way that he stood in silence at his trial by the Sanhedrin. And the cardinal tells him that he must be gotten rid of before he messes up the whole process. He is sorry, but he has to die again. And so the Grand Inquisitor goes to Jesus and with his pale lips kisses Jesus as Judas did. He turned toward the door, opened it, and left Jesus there alone in the dungeon. He left Jesus alone there in the dungeon. That is what fanaticism does. It actually kills Jesus. It forgets, like the Grand Inquisitor forgot, that no matter how often you kill him, Jesus always comes back. He comes back when and where there is suffering, injustice, and neglect. He comes back to comfort, to heal, to love, and to forgive. And he comes back to heal the fanatic as well as the sinner. He comes back to make them all whole. And so Jesus, what he does is that he loves us so much that he takes our fear away and helps us to be tolerant and loving and kind to those who may not agree with us. But we seek to listen because we have learned to learn from Christ, who has given us rest.
Thank you for sharing this half hour with us. We hope our program has brought you strength and spiritual insight. We invite you to tune in next week. Until then, we wish you God's very best. Life is such a precious gift. God meant for us to live it productively and to its fullest. This is our prayer for you.